originates more than 500 miles to the south of the Great Pyramid. All of the walls and the roof of the well-known King's Chamber are composed of enormous granite blocks, as is the ceiling. What if you were mistaken about everything you believe to be true about the pyramids? Imagine a structure that is so enormous and exact that it confounds contemporary engineers, yet is officially attributed to a culture that used crude tools in just 20 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza is more than simply a mausoleum, it's a complex mystery that has the potential to completely alter human history. Graham Hancock spent decades assembling clues from water-worn stones, old star maps, and secret rooms to reveal shocking proof of a long-lost society that created wonders that go much beyond what is generally believed. This isn't conjecture. The evidence may astound you, and it challenges the narrative that has been presented to us. Questioned is the Khufu connection. Pharaoh Khufu, sometimes known as Khufu or Cheops, is universally associated with the Great Pyramid of Giza. According to history books, he used tens of thousands of trained laborers and crude copper equipment to build this enormous building circa 2500 BCE. However, the relationship between Khufu and the pyramid gets hazy when you search for concrete evidence. The evidence inside the pyramid itself is remarkably lacking for a building of size. The inside walls of the Great Pyramid are devoid of any inscriptions, hieroglyphs, dedications, or even names, in contrast to other tombs and temples from the same era. The majority of Egyptian royal tombs are brimming with carved writings that relate stories about the afterlife, declare the ruler's divine authority, and praise the gods. However, the Great Pyramid is made of silent, cold stone. In the king's chamber, the purported sarcophagus is simple, unadorned, and, most importantly, empty. No artifacts, treasures, or mummy attesting to a royal connection or burial have ever been found. One piece of evidence discovered in 1837 is a major source of support for conventional Egyptology. British explorer Colonel Howard Wyse found quarry markings inside a secret room. Wyse's quarry marks are frequently displayed as old graffiti bearing the name Khufu. However, there are more questions than answers in that story. Wyse had good reasons. His financing and notoriety were at risk due to competition from other explorers. Inconsistencies in his notes raised the possibility that the marks were faked or at the very least significantly altered, and there were no witnesses to his finding. The sole direct connection between Khufu and the pyramid are those quarry traces. No papyrus scroll, temple relief, or external inscription clearly identifies Khufu as the builder. It is really perplexing that there is such a glaring quiet within what ought to be the greatest regal monument. Why would a society that diligently recorded royal ancestry and accomplishments elsewhere abandon this building as a blank canvas? According to Graham Hancock, Khufu may not have constructed the pyramid at all. Rather, he might have discovered it already in place and merely asserted it for religious or political purposes. It's possible that later dynasties modified or restored the pyramid without fully understanding its original purpose or architects. This notion casts doubt on the conventional wisdom and raises the possibility that the pyramid's beginnings predate the Old Kingdom by a significant margin. The Great Pyramid is clean and far more advanced than the majority of other pyramids from that era, which are in ruins or disintegrating. Even the Egyptians themselves might have marveled at an enigmatic legacy they did not comprehend if it had existed before Khufu. The actual enigma is set in motion by this uncomfortable possibility. When and how was this magnificent structure built? The more you learn, the more you see that the official narrative is not credible. However, this is only the start of a much more complex mystery regarding the knowledge and technology that underpinned the Great Pyramid. Not only who built it, but how, if Khufu wasn't the one who accomplished it. Because the pyramid's engineering is unique among ancient structures. Past its time. The Great Pyramid is an incredible feat of engineering accuracy that still confounds specialists today. It is remarkably aligned with true north. Only 0.05 degrees separates it, which is so accurate that even contemporary surveyors would be challenged. This is true north, which can only be located with sophisticated equipment and astronomical observation, not magnetic north, which changes over time. It seems unrealistic to expect such accuracy from laborers using only wooden sleds and copper tools. The pyramid's enormous base comes next. It covers more than 13 acres, but it is level throughout, measuring less than an inch. Surveying skills and building methods much beyond those of the ancient Egyptians are required to achieve this level of flatness on such a massive scale. This task would be too difficult for even today's laser-guided technology. An additional level of complexity is introduced by the arrangement of the stones. The granite slabs and limestone casing stones come together incredibly well. A razor blade cannot fit between several joints because they are so tight. In order to distribute force and weight in a way that demonstrates sophisticated structural engineering understanding, some are even curved or angled to interlock. This isn't just stacking. It's a thoughtful, intricate architectural achievement meant to last for millennia. However, the official narrative is based on tools that are considerably too soft to successfully shape granite, such as copper chisels and dolerite pounding stones. With these instruments, experimental archaeology has attempted to replicate this process, but progress has been painfully slow and frequently results in the destruction of the tools themselves. Assigning a block every 2.5 minutes for 20 years in a row, with an estimated 2.3 million blocks weighing between 2 and 15 tons each, is so fast and massive that it defies reality. The interior spaces exhibit exceptional architectural intelligence, especially the Grand Gallery and King's Chamber. The structure contains information about the solar year equinoxes, and the height-to-base ratio roughly corresponds to P, and even the curvature of the Earth. This implies that the pyramid was more than just a tomb, rather, it was a stone-carved scientific tool that demonstrated a sophisticated grasp of astronomy and mathematics. According to Graham Hancock, trial and error or crude instruments cannot produce such engineering complexity. In addition, later Old Kingdom pyramids are significantly less impressive. Many of them are unstable or in ruins, indicating a perplexing decline in building quality. Why did technical expertise appear to disappear so quickly if the Great Pyramid was constructed during Khufu's reign? Hancock comes to a significant conclusion. The Great Pyramid was probably an inherited marvel created or inspired by a previous culture with lost technological expertise rather than a product of its supposed time. Its endurance and accuracy cast doubt on our presumptions about human potential and ancient history. Above all, it necessitates reconsidering not only who constructed it but also how. Egyptologists will now tell you that since they placed large blocks on moist sand and pushed them along, they were able to move them. However, mastering design is only half the problem. The puzzle of how to move and arrange the enormous stones adds to the intrigue. The enigma of the granite block. The majority of the granite blocks used to build the king's chamber weigh up to 80 tons each. At Aswan, more than 500 kilometers south of Giza, these stones were quarried. It is an engineering nightmare to move several blocks of this size upstream on the Nile, then bring them inland and raise them more than 15 meters into the core of the pyramid. Official hypotheses suggest using ropes, brute force, and wooden sleds. However, this is debatably practicable. The ramp theory, which is the most frequently recognized explanation, envisions enormous ramps that are either straight or spiral and are constructed beside the pyramid in order to push stones higher. Engineers, however, criticize this approach, pointing out the impractical size that ramp construction would need. The ramp would have to have more material than the pyramid itself and be longer than a mile. Surprisingly, there is no archaeological proof that such colossal ramps ever existed. Nothing, not even residues or leftovers. There is no physical evidence to corroborate the various ideas that suggest internal spiral ramps or pulley systems existed. The pressure required to move and shape granite stones of this size is just too much for so-called equipment like copper chisels and wooden sleds. Despite having the most up-to-date knowledge and abilities, workers and contemporary crane operators who attempted to replicate the ancient methods found them to be incredibly ineffective or even impossible to execute. Numerous engineers have attested to the fact that, even with the use of ancient Egyptian tools, they would not be able to reconstruct the Great Pyramid. This audacious declaration casts doubt on long-held beliefs and raises the possibility that there were once technology or techniques that have been lost. Hancock freely asserts that deep knowledge, a supremacy in engineering physics that we no longer possess, was the driving reason behind this initiative rather than brute force. Could it be that the builders were furious about the situation? Their particular knowledge was hidden or forgotten, not just because they were not supported. Hancock said that's how he feels. Instead of using lifting devices and other well-known physics applications as examples, he speculatively gives them the building precision and scale of the entire pyramid. Although the lack of direct evidence for these technologies is regrettable, it does not negate their viability. One of the primary causes of the extreme differences between orthodox Egyptology and alternative hypotheses regarding the interpretation of Egyptian artifacts is the transportation and building mystery that has persisted over time. The sands already conceal a significant portion of humanity's lost past. Nobody knows how much more there is, or if the Great Pyramid is a testament to human frailty or a feat of ancient brilliance. Since the timeline provided by conventional history just does not suit the data discovered thus far, the questions of how eventually give way to those of when and possibly who. Sphinx and water erosion. The Great Sphinx, a colossal statue carved from a single limestone block, is located at the edge of the Giza Plateau. Scholars often attribute the Sphinx's construction to Pharaoh Khafre and date it to approximately 2500 BCE. Geological research, however, casts doubt on this timeline. The Sphinx's surrounding limestone has unique erosion patterns that deviate from the usual desert abrasion caused by wind and sand. In the 1990s, geologist Dr. Robert Schoch was among the first to investigate the weathering of the Sphinx from a geological rather than an archaeological standpoint. He saw that the Sphinx's body and the adjacent enclosure walls had deep vertical fractures. These characteristics are strikingly similar to erosion brought on by heavy, protracted rainfall, something Egypt's desert climate hasn't experienced in thousands of years. Only at a time much earlier than the acknowledged building date could such water erosion have taken place. Approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, in the late Pleistocene era, the Giza region last saw substantial and prolonged rainfall. This places the Sphinx's creation thousands of years before the Egyptian dynasty era began. If the geological evidence is correct, then long before the pharaohs controlled Egypt, there was a highly developed society that was able to carve the Sphinx. This theory, which implies the existence of a highly organized society capable of colossal production long before conventional history acknowledges it, produced a profound shift in understanding. Re-examining the entire history of human civilization in this area is made possible by the disparity between the geological results and the conventional timetable. It turns out that the Sphinx might be the only relic from a vanished era. Schoch's findings were first discounted by skeptics as fringe science in favor of more traditional theories like wind erosion. However, sand and wind alone cannot account for the characteristic deep cracks. Water is the only fit. Geologists and historians alike are compelled by this data to re-evaluate the Sphinx's provenance and actual age. Its worn-out mystery hints to information that has been lost beneath popular tales. With the aid of his research, Graham Hancock connected his findings to a broader idea known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which postulates a worldwide apocalypse that occurred some 12,800 years ago. The demise of past cultures and a significant shift in the global climate were caused by either a comet impact or a massive meltwater flood. Therefore, the Sphinx might be the last remnant of a civilization that this cataclysm destroyed. Although we may consider the Sphinx to be a protector of the pyramids, this new evidence indicates that the guardian was indeed the Sphinx. If the Sphinx is indeed older than the dynasty Egyptians, it is very likely that the succeeding pharaohs would have claimed this ancient structure as their own, much like the Great Pyramid. This type of chronology suggests that many of the items we think of as belonging to ancient Egypt may actually be remnants of a previous culture whose achievements are only now becoming apparent. In addition to being a statue, the Sphinx stretches the limits of history by acting as a geological time capsule. In addition to raising additional queries about the beginnings of civilization and human knowledge, this ultimate mystery raises the question of who these ancient engineers were and what had become of their community. In order to get the answers, one would have to delve down into the dirt where the facts were buried. These truths have since been eroded by time, yet the erosion and water still draw our attention. Our eyes naturally turn from the water-scarred limestone of the Sphinx to the sky above, where the pyramid's astronomical alignments hold yet another astounding revelation. Celestial alignments and Orion. Scholars and travelers have long been fascinated by the arrangement of Giza's three great pyramids. The offset placement of the tiniest pyramid, which at first glance appeared to be a flaw, has now been shown to be a purposeful design that reflects something far larger. The three stars of Orion's belt, a recognizable constellation in the night sky, are reflected in this pattern. This remarkable geographic agreement was initially seen by astronomer Robert Bovell, who created the so-called Orion correlation theory. Bovell went one step farther and used astronomical software to determine when the stars in Orion's belt would have appeared in the exact arrangement that the pyramids replicated. These three stars are here. This is Orion, which is in the same location as Egypt's magnificent pyramids. The solution? Around 10,500 BCE. There is a reason for this celestial alignment. It provides a second independent line of evidence that suggests the Giza complex is substantially older, as it directly relates to the time range implied by the water erosion of the Sphinx. This alignment also implies that the person who constructed the pyramids had a high level of astronomical knowledge in addition to significant architectural expertise. By charting the heavens, the ancient builders incorporated cosmic knowledge into their colossal constructions. This was more than just a monument or a grave. It was a message written in stone that would endure for millennia, a cosmic blueprint. Without a doubt, the discovery of pyramids at other ancient locations across the world supports the idea that they existed in the record of the stars. The line of massive building that displays the heavenly stars runs continuously from Teotihuacan in Mexico to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. This worldwide trend suggests a shared, archaic knowledge that predates the civilizations that are typically associated with these locations. According to Graham Hancock, the argument that has been carried down through split cultures may be a lost global legacy of sacred geometry and astronomy. The degree of precision with which these monuments match the positions of stars points to a main source, perhaps the occupants of a highly skilled pre-cataclysmic civilization in both heaven and earth. The secret knowledge of the Giza Plateau is also incredibly accurate. In addition to depicting Orion's belt, it also includes knowledge about Earth's dimensions, the solar year, and equinox cycles, as well as mathematical constants. The argument for an advanced and early origin is strengthened by the fact that this degree of skill is significantly higher than what historians attribute to Old Kingdom Egyptians. The pyramid's cosmic blueprint, which links human history to the universe, is a silent testament to a culture that attempted to immortalize its knowledge via gigantic stone. When viewed in this way, the Giza pyramids serve as both global symbols of the unity of earth and heaven and the remnants of a single society. The question of who knew is growing more urgent as the stars above reveal their mysterious signals. In addition to being concealed in Egypt's sands, the solution can also be found in the remnants of a vanished people. And a distinct image of a civilization lost to time but leaving behind enduring legacies emerges when we follow these cosmological and architectural traces. Echoes of architecture. A striking pattern appears across continents as we trace the path of ancient knowledge beyond Egypt. The Sun Pyramid in Teotihuacan, Mexico, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and even the pyramids of Meroe in Sudan are examples of pyramid buildings with celestial alignments that can be found outside of the Giza Plateau. In Jebel, a small mountain north of Khartoum, in the deep south, Sudan possesses more than twice as many pyramids than Egypt. In terms of design, orientation, and mathematical accuracy, these enormous distances and utterly disparate cultures are quite similar. How could such aligned structures be regularly produced by civilizations with no known contact? These pyramids frequently encode similar mathematical constants and celestial bodies, suggesting a universal language of holy geometry, according to architectural experts. The measurements and angles show a deep comprehension of geography and astronomy since they match not only star systems but also Earth's size and cycles. This pervasive association contradicts theories that rely solely on chance or a single innovation. According to Graham Hancock, this suggests a common heritage, a transfer of knowledge from an even older culture whose presence is usually disregarded by mainstream archaeology. These fingerprints' uniformity points to a worldwide network of knowledge that has been passed down through the ages, spanning deserts and oceans. Centuries before Mesoamerican or ancient Egyptian written records. It's as though fragments of a lost blueprint for cosmic alignment and massive creation have been preserved by dispersed tribes. The idea is that there was an advanced and widespread culture that underwent a cataclysmic event and gradually lost traces of its existence through the monuments, rather than a linear progression of civilizations, with their destroyed and isolated cultures represented by the grand monuments. As a result, it would not always be the major accomplishments but rather the pieces of a larger puzzle, each of which would disclose a small portion of the advanced culture that was hidden or exposed in stone. Not only does architecture connect the surface across time, but it also connects human knowledge and aspirations beyond time and geographical boundaries. Despite their differences in specifics, the very instruments and methods used in building have a certain precision and intent that suggests a shared set of values. The pyramids were imbued with divine meanings that were immortalized in stone by the masons, who were not merely replicating shapes. This discovery casts doubt on a commonly held belief that ancient societies were constantly evolving independently of other civilizations or interactions. The presence of these buildings at such disparate locations on the map reminds us of the lost periods in human history, when powerful empires may have coexisted undetected due to their shared conception of the universe and the earth. Is this the remains of a civilization that perished in a natural disaster? However, these enormous memorials have been consistently honored throughout history. Recognizing these architectural echoes requires expanding one's perspective on human history and adopting a new perspective on the transmission and evolution of knowledge. It eliminates the notion that the most amazing events in the ancient world were the product of a progressive and interconnected human tale rather than a single genius. This fresh viewpoint challenges us to reconsider the architects of the pyramids and their intent, linking their influence to societies that the sands of time have long since wiped off the face of the planet. The subject becomes more complex: who were these individuals, and what became of their great knowledge that nearly vanished from the annals of history? The theory of lost civilizations. Graham Hancock offers a daring and unnerving conclusion regarding the real pyramid builders. He contends that these constructions were not created by Pharaoh Khufu or his successors, in contrast to conventional Egyptology. Rather, they came from a pre-Ice Age society that was destroyed 12,800 years ago by a worldwide apocalypse that may have been caused by a comet impact called the Younger Dryas catastrophe. This was a lot more developed society than most people realize. Hancock characterizes these ancient engineers as skilled navigators, astronomers, and architects. These historic constructions were developed into the Great Pyramid of Giza. They were able to push them along on wet sand, move heavy blocks, and place them on it. People who have information that is incompatible with what is understood today. They are survivors of a civilization whose legacy was dispersed and obscured by time and disaster, and he refers to them as the gods' magicians. Fragments of this knowledge were carried by their successors, who wandered the world and laid the groundwork for later societies. The pyramids of Egypt are not the only examples of this lost civilization's impact. Similar massive structures and stellar alignments can be seen all over the world. According to Hancock, the Great Pyramid is a type of time capsule, a purposefully constructed message meant to endure wars, floods, and the deterioration of memory itself. It was constructed as a beacon of knowledge encoded in stone rather than just as a tomb or monument. The theory implicates the long-term ignorance or repression of human antiquity and openly defies historical scholarly consensus. Finding a far older, more enlightened past is certain to topple established narratives, academic careers, and national pride, according to Hancock, who also asserts that there are legitimate reasons for the powerful institutions to retain the conventional timeline. Numerous disciplines, including geology, archaeology, astronomy, and comparative mythology, provide support to this theory, which eliminates the idea that a worldwide calamity caused the demise of highly developed prehistoric societies. Multidisciplinary insights that have been established over time, not only speculative, now demand careful thought and re-examination. By tracing the traces of this vanished culture through global architecture and cosmic knowledge that has been encoded, Hancock is now allowing the audience to view human history as a multi-story structure. There are numerous chapters in the history of scientific achievement and the resilience of the human race, and the commonly recognized chronologies are but one of them. The perception of the pyramids shifts from that of ancient wonders to that of ancient signals from the past that are enigmatic, deliberate, and open to interpretation by anyone who dare to question the official history when it is realized that the pyramids were the legacy of the vanished civilization. The body's thorough inquiry is currently revealing the story of the ancient civilization, and the upcoming attractions will round out their story and keep the public interested while igniting debates. It's still a mystery. Why has the memory of such a civilization been so obscured if it ever existed? And who gains from keeping its secrets a secret? Secrets and suppression. Many of the most compelling discoveries about the Great Pyramid have been treated with silence and resistance rather than excitement, despite amazing finds pointing to mysteries long buried beneath the sands. German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink launched UPU-2, a remote-controlled robot, into the pyramid's tight tunnels in 1993. Deep within, the robot found a sealed door that should have sparked global curiosity. Rather, the door's secrets are still hidden since Egyptian officials quickly seized control and prevented additional investigation. There was more to this practice of hiding. In 2017, researchers used a state-of-the-art particle scanning method called muon tomography to look within the pyramid structure without excavating. Above the Grand Gallery, their scans showed a huge, hidden vacuum the size of a passenger airliner. It is astounding to find such a large, uncharted area inside one of the most researched structures in the world. But no cameras or researchers have been permitted inside, and no further data has surfaced, as though the finding has been discreetly put on hold. Graham Hancock has become more and more irritated with what he refers to as intentional censorship. He thinks that these discoveries are being kept because they pose a threat to the conventional narrative of human history rather than out of safety concerns. Many fundamental elements of archaeology, history, and national identity would need to be rewritten if the pyramids were not constructed by the dynasty Egyptians as is widely believed. Institutions, careers, and even cultural pride are at risk. Gatekeeping, selective acceptance of data, and methodical rejection of opposing ideas are common responses to such problems. Questions that challenge conventional wisdom are treated with resistance and justifications rather than open inquiry and truthful research. Hancock contends that this is more about maintaining a cozy narrative that protects existing authority than it is about reality. A more comprehensive image of a well-thought-out scheme to use denial and political expediency in addition to sand and stone to hide the past is subsequently exposed. There is still much to learn about the Great Pyramid, a landmark that has the power to alter our understanding of human origins. Hancock views this as the real problem of the truth and power in the academic community rather than a conspiracy of fringe conjecture. However, Hancock's defiance of the silence has inspired millions of people to reconsider the past. By assembling geological, archaeological, astronomical, and architectural evidence, he makes the case for the presence of an older, more developed civilization than those described in history books. This civilization used stones to transmit signals that have not yet been thoroughly investigated. It's a very serious scenario. In addition to appending our comprehension of the pyramids, acknowledging such an entirely different past makes us wonder about the fundamental characteristics of our species. It suggests that sophisticated technology and knowledge existed long before the conventional chronology and that the history of humanity is far more complex and rich than what we have been taught. Why would knowledge this disruptive be quietly ignored or allowed to drift into obscurity is still an open topic. Hancock contends that the response is not coincidental. He feels that if we were to really embrace these concepts, we would have to deal with something extremely uncomfortable. It would entail acknowledging that some of the most important questions regarding the origins of humans remain unsolved and that our knowledge of history is inadequate. If the pyramids actually contain signals from a vanished culture, they require more than just technical analysis. They demand humility. They ask us to acknowledge that the explanations we have now could not be sufficient. Hancock and many of his supporters believe that the true history of the pyramids is more than just a topic for academics or classrooms. It challenges our self-perception. It implies that human society might be more older, more intricate, and more vulnerable than what we are taught. This is about restarting the discourse in its entirety rather than substituting one story for another. History is hardly a linear line of advancement if these old buildings were constructed using information that we no longer comprehend. Rise, fall, and rediscovery are all part of the cycle. Furthermore, in order to hear what the pyramids might be saying, we must re-examine the past with an open mind and acknowledge that certain truths were forgotten long before they were rejected. The reality of the pyramids might be more amazing than we could have ever dreamed, appending all of our preconceived notions. These ancient structures may be messages from a vanished society that predates history books by a great deal, according to Graham Hancock's research. If you thought this was enlightening, please like and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of the greatest questions facing humanity.